have a magazine that comes in once a month. It's called Club Industry. It's actually email. And it talks about what the forecast is for 2023 in the wellness sector. So whether it be HIIT training, Olympic lifting, et cetera, CrossFit, all 5 were about mindfulness, whether it be breath work, whether it be sound work, whether it be meditation. There wasn't one thing about actual lifting or working out. So I thought to myself, this is really way overdue. And I want to talk about that for a second, because I was talking with my dad the other day, and he's 81, mind you, and he listens to Deepak Chopra as he walks to the beach. And he said to me, he goes, you know, it takes work to keep this head in the right direction. And I go, yeah. I go, like Arthur C. Brooks, who teaches happiness at Harvard, put it in a way that, like, we're the only species in this world that is able to actually think about the future, think about the past, be nervous about the future, be anxious about past events, create fear. Everything else is present where they're 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet, whatever many feet they are, right where they are at that time. So, in other words, they don't need to work on this too much because the present aspect is pretty here now to them, where us and humans, in order to keep it so we don't have these huge highs and lows, we have to vet different things. How do we find a flow state more and more and more throughout the day? And it's not something that's naturally going to come to you. It's something that's going to take work. So we train everything from the brain down, when we really don't talk about training what's up here. So for me, and I'm going to share a little bit about myself, is I never really went through a depressional aspect, but I have anxiety. I've always had anxiety. Runs in my family. My mom had it very thickly, and I've had it probably since 8th grade. So I had to go through it instead of around it. Really, at that point, they didn't talk about medications. They didn't acknowledge the fact what it was. My dad, I remember saying one time at work, he goes, everyone's got it, he's got to deal with it. So I ended up having to learn tools to go through it. And at the end of the day, I'm grateful for that, because I didn't want to take a pill or anything else. But at this point in my life, what I'm learning now is, what if they had given me tools? In other words, how do I flip the switch on my head so I don't have that anxious state all the time? And through these years, you know, if you know me, you know I love to work out and everything else, but that's just sort of like a mechanism to help me in a flow state, right? So my 5 things I work for to get in a flow state, to get me out of that anxious state, would be 1, working out, movement. Okay, I love movement. It doesn't have to be lifting weights. I would say movement more of sport. All right. Number 2, music. So music to me, I absolutely love, like town and country. I love music. 3, my wife, my dogs. That's being with family. Okay. 4 is nature. So we live down here in Southwest Florida, where I absolutely love being amongst the trees, the ocean, everything else. And then 5 is, I'm naturally sort of an introvert because of that anxiety. So I always resist wanting to get out of that. So for instance, when we go out at night, or when we go out with couples, or we go out in parties, or if we go anywhere, I'm always resistant, but when I get done, I'm much happier. So for me, it's socializing. And what I'll tell you is something really quickly is, like, at my dogs, you'll see it, I'll take them to a dog park once in a while. You'll see a dog that's like a puppy that was at a rescue, and the dog's hiding behind the guy's lap, or woman's lap, right? And then a month later, I go to the same dog park, and the dog is in the midst of playing the best time of his life, loves it, learns to socialize, everything else. That's such a good analogy, because that's literally what I think 9 out of 10 humans need, is like, let's be forced to be in a situation. Let's be forced to congregate. Let's be forced to be social. So we're social creatures. And the change you saw in that animal is a change I think we need to, you know, create within ourselves as well. And I think at the same time, you have to vet what goes through your ears. And when I say vet, that means control. You have to sort of manage what you're hearing and what you're, you know, surrounding yourself with. If you're listening to music that's constantly negative, if you're listening to the news, if you're on social media all the time, if you're constantly comparing yourself to someone else because you're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever else there is, you have to understand that like all this information, this is new. This is 2023. We haven't seen the end experiment yet. We don't have the meta-analysis yet from what this is going to do, what COVID did to us, what all society is doing this at this point. So at this point, we have to make sure we have our blinders on and understand, hey, what works for me and what works for my head, what works for my family, what works for my friends, and surround yourself with people that lift you up, right? But no, don't bring you down. And when you think about words, I'll take, this is from my friend Kelly, depression, what's that mean? It's like you're depressing things, okay? So what if I have a young man that's depressing things or a young woman that's depressing things and like they're afraid to act out? Like be a man, you could be angry, you could be mad, that's okay. That's okay, let that expression happen. Let that out because that's part of growing, that's part of learning what the boundaries are and how to act and how to feel. And throughout this, course, what I'm seeing a ton of is I'll have, 6, 7, 8 people a day, and 7 to 8 of them are dealing with something. And it doesn't matter if it's not just kids, it's not just adults, it's everybody. And because of that, I think we really have to focus on not only the fact that we're now acknowledging that, hey, we need to work on this, but how do we work on this? And it shouldn't be I have to spend $600 a week on a psychiatrist or a psychologist. It should be like, hey, so what is the tools? So if I'm going to tell you the tools, I'll start with one thing Arthur Brooks says at Harvard. And let me just give you a quick hint. He teaches a course on happiness in Harvard. And guess how long it takes for that course to sell out? 2 minutes. What does that tell you? That obviously people are searching for happiness and well-being mentally. Okay? So what he says is before I counsel anybody, he'll make that person walk an hour during sunrise without any electronics on them and just walk as the sun rises and feel the rhythm of nature, feel the rhythm of the walk, because there is a rhythm behind it. There's a neurological connection with the ground, there's earthing, there's everything else. But before he does it and talks to you as a client, he's going to make you do that for a month, okay? So that's one tool. Take a walk. Take the electronics, put them away. It's the worst thing for you, quite honestly, all right? Number 2, use your family, all right? Your family is your safeguard. Use your friends. That's a huge, huge component. Number 3, make sure that, like, what works for you. For me, I re-energize sometimes being alone, okay? So, for instance, if I'm around a lot of energy all day long, and I have client after client or team after team or athlete after athlete, I want to be left alone for a 4 or 5 hour period so I can sort of re-energize. That's me. And last but not least is people find their happiness, their happiest moments are when they push themselves 4 to 10% past the limit of comfort. It's usually that 4 to 10% barrier of I did something I was a little uncomfortable with, but I finished it, and I might have done bad, I might have done good, but I did it, and I completed that action. So here's what I want you to end up with today, is every one of us is going through a mental struggle to some degree. And I want you to understand one thing is don't run from it. You have to go through it. You have to feel it. You have to accept it. Then you have to figure out a tool to use to make sure you can get over it. And when you do that, it will be a consistent life more so than that bumpy